I get to introduce Maria Walters this morning. Maria Walters lives in Atlanta, where she runs the Atlanta Skeptics. They hold their monthly meetings. It's an informal, community-driven group that allows people to get together in an open environment to learn, to teach, to connect with one another. She's also a writer for skepchick.org. A lot of you are huge fans of Rebecca Watson, who is, I think, your fearless leader there. How you say it, a group of women and one deserving male?
That's right.
Very, very snarky, wonderful blog. If you don't read it, you should. She's an activist who focuses a lot on vaccinations. She runs the TDAP session at DragonCon, is that right? Which will be September of this year. If you can get out to see that, it's wonderful. She was probably the most fun person to work with in putting together your pamphlets, because she insisted through email that I put booyah somewhere in there. So it is my huge pleasure to introduce to you now Maria Walters, giving a talk on how to start and maintain grassroots campaigns. Thank you, Maria Walters. Booyah.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
JT kind of covered it, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an overview of who I am. I'm Maria Walters. I'm the lead organizer of the Atlanta Skeptics. I write for Skepchick. The past couple of years, I started getting interested in local activism. We do a Skeptics in the Pub and things like that, but I wanted to kind of do a little bit more. So we started doing things like charity fundraisers. We run a Tdap clinic at DragonCon, and we did one at TAM this past year. And I've also been working with Desiree Schell, who some of you may know. She does the Skeptically Speaking podcast. She's fantastic. In real life, Desiree's a union organizer, and so she and I put together a workshop basically taking the ideas of the activism principles that she uses for unions and figuring out how to apply them to skeptical activism. And so we really have like a 2-hour workshop that I'm going to just cover the very, very major highlights here. So what is activism? Well, it's not new, for one thing. From the Chicago workers' strikes in 1867 to Mahatma Gandhi collecting salt from the ocean to defy the British salt tax in 1930 to Rosa Parks' campaign to oppose the Montgomery, Alabama city policy of racial segregation in the 50s, campaigns of activism have long been used to bring about social and political change. And whether or not you see skepticism as a social movement, the reality is that bringing about changes based on science and critical thinking involve very much the same concepts. Ensuring that evolution is covered in school curricula and that creationism is engaging in political action. Advocating against faith-based initiatives is working to bring about social change. And there are lessons that skeptics can learn from social movements about outreach, about creating powerful messages that will resonate with the public, and about putting pressure on people in power. Social movements are the experts in this area, whereas skeptics are sort of just starting out. Oops, that went the wrong way. So why activism? Why would we want to be involved in activism at all? Because skepticism can be more than just about being right. The evidence says we're right? But the thing is that some people don't really seem to care so much about the evidence. And in fact, using facts can actually work against you. Political scientists at the University of Michigan did a study showing that when someone passionately believes in something, reading a factual correction can literally make them believe harder. They remember reading something about the issue and forget the little detail that the facts show that they were wrong. It's called the backfire effect. And it means that if you approach a really emotionally charged issue with a factual argument, not only will you not persuade anyone, it's actually likely that you'll be worse off than if you had just left them alone in the first place. It's kind of a bummer, right? But it's not a lost cause. So maybe you can't always reason with people, but luckily that's not your only option. You can take action to get people to try to change their ways, even when they don't necessarily agree with you. So where to start? So how do you do activism, you may ask? So first of all, is there an issue that you want to tackle? It's very common for the need to drive the action. A group discovers that Fred Phelps is protesting in their town and they want to stage a counter-protest. This happened to us in Atlanta. Or you discover that a local chiropractor is hawking a cure for cancer. You kind of get the urge to stand up and quit just talking about it and actually do something. So the best place to really start is with a problem that you want to solve, with a reactive campaign. But sometimes there isn't always an obvious problem. So you can look around your community for issues that you can be proactive about, whether it's an alt-med practitioner selling snake oil, or a local school board looking to put stickers in evolution textbooks, those types of things. And once you've identified your potential issue, you can start planning a campaign around it. Now the purpose, I'm going to talk a lot about planning, and the purpose of the planning exercise is certainly not to discourage anyone from taking on a challenge, but understanding the risks to a campaign and what can go wrong is really crucial, so you can go into the campaign confidently. I mean, every group has limited resources, right? So the planning process really helps you figure out what the best use is of those resources, and which battles are worth fighting and which are better left alone. So what you want to do is identify a few kind of key components. First of all, your goals. So what is the general outcome that you'd like from this campaign? Now, you think big on this, right? This can be your large overarching issue, like the end of the anti-vaccination movement, right? It's likely something that you or your group probably can't achieve in a single campaign, but wouldn't it be nice if you could? Keeping that general goal in mind will really help you stay on target and focus your attention. And when you have decisions to make, you can base them on what's going to further my goal the most. Secondly, your objectives, also known as winnable issues. These are things that you and your group will take on with the aim of actually creating change. So what will you actually accomplish at the end of this campaign? And you should identify your primary objective, the objective that you base the start, the finish, and ultimately the success of your campaign on, as well as secondary objectives. And your secondary objectives may not even be fully outlined within your initial campaign plan, but they should be recognized as important gains, and even small wins can always boost the morale of an existing campaign. Be very cautious about the objective to raise awareness or to get attention. While these may be perfectly legitimate objectives, the most important question to identify when defining your objectives is, how will I measure success? And how do you measure awareness? You can't really just track media hits, because for every person that hears about your campaign and thinks it's a great idea, there could be somebody who thinks it's silly and is completely turned off. So is that a net neutral? Larger organizations and professional activists do professional public surveys about their campaigns, but without that kind of infrastructure, you're really just guessing about how people are receiving your message. A creative public awareness campaign can get you media coverage, but if raising awareness is going to be your primary objective, you better have a really good message, or couple it with a tangible action that you want people to take after their awareness has been raised, and that will help you kind of tally how well you've done. Next, identify your target audience. So who are the people who can affect the change you want? So this could be key decision makers like politicians or business owners, or people you are counting on to exert additional pressure, such as parents or students or teachers. Most campaigns will have multiple audiences, so figuring out who they are will help you figure out the best way to communicate to them. Next, look for your allies. So who are your allies? Are there people who are not necessarily associated directly with your group, but will still work with you because you have similar goals? And what level of support can you expect, and how will you recruit these people? And finally, do your homework. Research any specific regulations in your area that will impact this campaign. It's based on the type of campaign that you're planning. For example, if you are planning to picket a homeopath, what are the city laws against demonstrations? What are the libel laws in your area? What can you actually do without putting your organization at risk? Also important, Do you have enough information to be able to take on the particular topic that you're fighting against? Define experts in your group who are comfortable with all the major talking points and who can speak to these very easily and reference the appropriate facts quickly and can be kind of your face for the media and for other groups. Think through the financial and the legal the legal ramifications to a campaign. If a campaign goes extremely well, will media attention be something that your group can handle? If your target fights back verbally, legally, or in other ways, are you ready and able to manage this? Okay, so I could do an entire presentation around communication and messaging. So I'm going to just boil it down to one slide, which is really the most important thing to work out when it comes to communication is what is your core message and how will you communicate it to your target audience. Sounds pretty simple, right? And it really should be. Try to keep your message simple but clear and make it personal. Find issues that will impact people, identify how it'll impact their lives, their kids, their pocketbooks, and so on. And when creating your message, don't assume that your audience knows your buzzwords or specific skeptical or atheist terminology. Not everyone just knows about the legal ruling of Kitzmiller versus Dover, or that Kirk Cameron has any opinions about bananas that weren't discussed in growing pains, you know? So remember that, and also remember that humor, although it can be very, very effective as a method of communicating a message, can also backfire on you a little. If it seems like you're mocking your audience or telling them that they're stupid for their beliefs, this may make them hold on tighter, or make your group seem cruel. And we're obviously talking a little bit about tone here, which is, you know, nobody's favorite topic. But I think in general, when you're talking about campaigns that involve humor, it's really important to have fewer conversations about tone and more conversations about objectives and what you're trying to accomplish. And that will help drive your success. So then you really get into the meat of your campaign and your tactics. Tactics are the vehicles that carry your message. And your tactics are limited only by your imagination. But there are some things that people have been doing for years in political and social justice communities that we know work. So I'm going to very briefly cover these. So start with, starting with hard pressure tactics. So this involves putting pressure on people in authority to get them to understand your position. So pressuring businesses, for example. Remember that for a business, their main motivation is profit. So if you can hurt their bottom line through boycotts, for example, they'll take notice. Pressuring government. Visit your local elected representative to discuss an issue. All it takes is a phone call to set up a meeting. Seek out support from respected members of your community who have a stake in the issue. And doctors or pharmacists who are against a particular alt health procedure, science teachers or parents who want to keep creationism out of the classroom, so on. Use these allies to help you reinforce your message. Make sure that you clearly ask your elected representative, what they intend to do about the issue and when. Take lots of notes during the meeting, since you may want to reference those later, but also taking notes scares the crap out of politicians. Then there's kind of more standard things like public protests, demonstrations, sit-ins, flash mobs. These can be used to draw public attention to an issue, with the implication that ignoring the issue could cost a business money or could cost politicians' votes. There are downsides to public protests. A protest can seem whiny or childish or disruptive. Also, if only a few people show up, you could look silly at best, and at worst, you could hurt your cause by showing that there are very few people who care about the issue. But a well-attended protest at an appropriate location with a well-crafted message can be productive and a lot of fun. Education and media activism involves trying to get public attention for your issue. Newspapers often look to letters to the editor as an indicator of interest in a topic. They're more likely to report on skeptical stories if they're receiving a lot of letters. And you can also use letter writing to correct bad reporting. Or if you're brave enough, you can try engaging people in the comments available on online stories. Beware, it can be a little terrifying in there, but you could be adding a skeptical perspective where there isn't one. And remember, the internet is forever. So, somebody goes back and does a search on a topic and finds that article, your comment will be there. The lone voice sometimes. One of the most successful ways to get your message out is to make connections with journalists. That means bloggers as well. So when you see an article that has a skeptical bent, make a note of the journalist, send them a note, give them some kudos. Maybe try to build a relationship with them. When you have a related campaign or a cause to promote, you'll already have your list of people that may be interested in writing something about it. At best case, you may become a source for that journalist who could start using you to run some questionable stuff by. Once you have this kind of database filled with potentially sympathetic journalists and a campaign to promote, write a press release. This really should be part of a much bigger media strategy where you map out your messaging in the best way to communicate it, but make sure that you have something standard that you can give to a journalist. A lot of times journalists will copy press releases word for word. It's great, but you have to make sure that your message is very clear and succinct within your press release. So blogs and social media can definitely rally the troops online, but this doesn't always translate into real-life action. Sometimes it does, but I'm not a social media expert, but if you're looking for some seriously solid information about online outreach and activism, I highly recommend Tim Farley's blogs. He does the whatstheharm.net, but he also has a blog called SkepTools, and he has some great ideas for online activism that pretty much anybody can do. But there are also some basics that you should do for really any campaign, on or offline. Make sure you have a blog or website for whatever event you're doing. Use Facebook, Twitter, Google+, whatever you can to help promote it. Twitter hashtags are great because they help you track what people are saying about the campaign. And if you're considering an entirely online campaign, there are a few things you need to think through. How effective will you be? If you're trying to pressure a business, would they consider most of their customers to be online and aware of your campaign? If not, they may not take you seriously. The targets of online campaigns may only take notice once your campaign has made it into the media or into the mainstream news, which is very often after it's gone viral, and really nobody knows how anything goes viral. It's usually something very disturbing or funny or a combination of both. It's hard to kind of go out and say, I'm going to make something go viral. Nobody really knows how to do that. So online campaigns can sometimes suffer from a lack of clearly defined objectives, and therefore equate success with media attention, which could be problematic. Again, going back to the ideas of the issues around raising awareness. Persuasion. So you can also find ways to go directly to the public to persuade them to take action. Gathering petition signatures, for example, allows you to get your message out, interact with the public one-on-one, learn a lot about opinions on the issue, and provide tangible evidence that people agree with you. Those are all really good things, but then what? Once you feel you have enough signatures to make an impact, you can approach businesses or organizations that you want to put pressure on, or government representatives that you think might be sympathetic. Politicians may be willing to even present them in the House, but if you do want to go that route, make sure that you collect the petitions themselves in the appropriate format that that level of government requires. So you have to do a little bit of research there. Online campaigns or online petitions can be used in the same way, for the same reasons, with about the same level of effectiveness. The Sense About Science campaign is a great example of a petition campaign that was very effective in terms of showing support and bringing together allies. But again, figure out what your objective is and how you're going to measure your success. If you want to speak directly to the public, whether it is to impart or to collect information, you can go directly to people's doors. It's a little bit annoying, I'm sure, a little bit intimidating, but it can be very, very effective, much more effective than media and online campaigns, because it allows for that personal connection. This tactic works particularly well for community activism, like school boards or things that involve a small group. You can go and you can say, this is happening in your neighborhood, in your school district. Similarly, public forums like school boards and local government meetings or votes, other kind of public consultations are really great opportunities to get your message out. Government agencies regularly hold town halls, public meetings on issues like healthcare and education, and these are really good opportunities to get your point of view out there among informed and active citizens. And fundraisers, which is something that we do a lot of. Vaccine clinics, blood drives, they go kind of one step further. They actually ask the public to take a specific action that impacts them directly. Get a shot, give money, and so on. This obviously requires more work, but if you get a person to actively participate, you know that you've probably convinced them that your message is sound. So you've gone through your activism campaign. What's next? Well, first of all, congratulate yourself. No matter what the status of your primary objective, you've officially done more to affect change than the vast majority of people have done or will ever do. Thank your team, have a party, get drunk, whatever. But many of us are worried that we'll find out that what we did was ineffective or that we've even hurt our cause. The thing is if we don't track our progress, we're never going to find out that what we were doing was a waste of time or figure out how we can do better. So take a look at your primary objective. This is your first measurable outcome. It should be easy to measure. Did anyone in power change their position? Did a business change their policy? If your objective is to have a certain company stop advertising anti-vaccine organizations, that's also your measurable outcome. Did it happen? Now, not achieving your primary objective doesn't mean your event was a failure. You can measure your secondary objectives, positive media hits, your internal success, contacts with other groups, and so on, new relationships, new supporters. Those are all secondary objectives, and they are valuable. I'm out of time, so I'm going to go really quickly on this last bit. As soon as possible after the campaign, do a post-mortem, a quick debrief with all of the key people. It shouldn't be a bitch session. It should really be a time for you to go through and say, what went wrong, what went right, what do we need to do better next time? Various activities will arise out of that. We need to build better relationships with media. We need to get more allies, whatever that is. And finally, once you're done with all of that, share your information. Now is when you go out there and you blog. Share it with other groups. Let other people learn from the things that you've learned. And also show off your accomplishments and show that you've had all these measurable outcomes and use that evidence to gauge your success. And then get ready to go do it all again. Now you know how to do it bigger, better, more effectively, so you can go out and change the world.